Something that we get asked all the time is, what is an allotment? So today I'm going to give you a brief history of what an allotment is and also what it involves, things like cost and that. So stick with us, we'll do a short video and I'll tell you all about our allotments. Quite often is what actually is an allotment. In today's video we're going to explore a brief history around allotments and I'm going to explain some of the restrictions and costs that are involved. So allotments can be traced back to Roman times, but allotments as we know them today started around the World War when there was a huge dig for victory campaign where people turned over their back gardens and everybody started to grow their own vegetables. That is where we get what we deem as an allotment today from. We did have a space of time when allotments seemed to be unfashionable or deemed something just for the poor. Whereas today we seem to be having more interest and a resurgence in people interested in growing your own food. So what actually is an allotment? An allotment is an allotted piece of ground that you rent and you pay an annual fee to be able to grow your own food on it. Some people grow flowers as well, but it's generally acceptable to grow food. You can rent these from different places. Most allotments are owned by councils, so you can also rent an allotment off a parish church, which is what we do here. Our allotment is rented off our church, and it is actually allotted graveyard land for when the graveyard that we are adjoining is full, but that's not going to be for many years yet. You can also have a community garden. A lot of people refer to those as allotments, where a lot of people in the community get together to grow food and crops and flowers, or as an educational purpose. And then you can also have a private allotment, which you rent off someone privately. It's their own land and they rent it out to people. Allotment sizes vary. Typically you will be able to get, say, a quarter plot, a half plot or a full plot. And all of these are measured in rods or perches. Historically so, anyway. Whereas today, I've never been spoken to about my plot being so many rods or so many perches, so I wouldn't be able to tell you how many it is. I know that our plot is, I think it's 110 foot long by 25 foot wide, and that's a full plot. So obviously a half plot is half of that, and a quarter plot is a quarter of that. But there are slight differences going depending on what site that you're on. In terms of sites, site sizes can vary quite dramatically. At this site here, we only have 11 people renting sites here. Whereas some sites, more inner city areas, you will find that you can get up to a couple of hundred people renting a small plot of land within that area. Different plot sites will have different security measures. Some of them are open, some of them even have public footpaths running through them. Our site is fully fenced off, enclosed, security locks, everything of that kind. But some people can just walk onto other allotment sites. And in terms of what an actual plot looks like, some people like to have open spaced beds like we have here. So we've got no raised edges, we just have beds that we walk down a path in between each one. Some people even choose to put half of their plot over to grass and have the other half for growing vegetables. And then others use raised beds like my plot neighbour here, who is absolutely lovely, by the way. Raised beds are especially good if you have poor soil and you need to add soil onto that, and if you've had contaminated soil and you want to put good soil on top. Some people also like raised beds just because they look a lot neater, but it is all down to personal preference. Not all allotments will have water on site. Some of them are literally a basic field that you have to look after. Other ones will have water, security, toilets, a meeting area, a little shop. It all varies site to site, and it all varies on if you have a committee or not. Now, we don't have a committee here, but what a committee is a group of people that are basically in charge of making sure that all plots are maintained and keeping people in order and making sure rules aren't being broken. But they're also helpful, generally people who have a lot of knowledge and you can go to for advice if you've got any issues. Speaking of keeping plots in order, different sites will have different rules and restrictions. A lot of places have restrictions around, say, fruit trees. They have to be 6 foot and no higher. You may not be able to have a glass greenhouse. You may only be able to have plastic. You may not be able to use things like plastic compost bins I saw somebody couldn't use. And then you may have a structure restriction, so you may not be able to have more than one greenhouse, for instance. Every site has different rules and regulations, and it varies all the way across the country. One of the restrictions that a lot of sites do have is that you are not allowed to sell the produce that you grow. This is because allotments are created for people to feed their family, and it is not seen as good practice to be then going and selling that on. Now, our allotment site, because it's owned by the parish council, doesn't have any restrictions in its contract. So technically we could sell our produce, but it's not something we would do. Instead of selling produce, something that a lot of people do is we will trade our produce. So if we grow something that next door didn't have, or maybe their vegetables didn't succeed, then people will trade for something that they need. So you just basically do swaps. We swap for materials, we swap for all sorts. An allotment site is a lovely community, and we all swap and give advice and support each other in our growing endeavours. So, how much does it cost? That's not something that you can easily put a pin in and say that's how much an allotment costs in the UK, because each site is different. The plots that we have are 110 foot with water, with gated security, but with no toilet, and we self-manage, is £26 a year. Our other site that we had, which was bigger, was £19 a year for this size plus another half. But then there are some sites that pay £3, there are some sites that pay £300. It all depends on where you are in the country and what the demand for land and growing space is in that area. Now, councils do have an obligation, if enough people get together, then they have to provide you with an allotment site to grow your food. And also, allotments can have chickens on them. I think in the covenant it says chickens and rabbits, and this is to rear for your own consumption, be it eggs or meat. Allotment sites are just fantastic. When you want to grow your own food but you just don't have the space at home to grow the amount that you want to grow, an allotment is a fantastic place to start. Some plots you will get and they are virtually immaculate as they are, and you can just get stuck straight in. Other sites are totally different. Some sites you can get and they will be like as high as you in brambles and haven't been touched for years and years, and then sometimes allotment committees may give you, say, a year free or 6 months free to get your feet under the table and get stuck in. But it really does vary all across the country. One of the charms about allotments is that we have a great ethos for make, do and mend and reuse and recycle. So a lot of sites will have their own personality because they are made up from things that people have gathered and reused and repurposed and made themselves. Allotments have a lot of charm. It's one of our old English traditions and we are very proud of them. So if any of my fellow allotmenteers, I love that term, allotmenteers, any fellow allotmenteers have anything that I've missed, let us know, pop it in the comments below. I'm sure people will be interested in reading. So that was a brief rundown of what an allotment is here in the UK. So thank you for watching our quick video. This was Jazz at Alternative Smallholding, and we will see you soon. Bye bye.